So, coming up next, it's a great honor and privilege to present to you our next speaker, who's Dimitris Patsos. He's a senior cybersecurity specialist at Microsoft, and it should be noted that he's also the president of ISC Squared Hellenic Chapter, which I happen to be a proud and active member as well. So Dimitris has more than 20 years of experience in enabling large organizations and governments in the EMEA region, managing their digital risk, cybersecurity, but also compliance and privacy challenges. Let us welcome Dimitris Patsos on stage. And his speech is going to be security through an innovation lens. So welcome, Dimitris.
Thank you, Spiro.
It's great having you on this year's OpenConf event, and we're looking forward to your speech. The floor is yours.
It's fantastic. Thank you. Or, as I would like to call myself, I'm a security person in between a development environment, in a development conference after the lunch break. So, OK, we'll get to that. So I'm going to approach one aspect of security, which is what we try to, position in modern organization, which is innovation. Traditionally, security used to be the doctor nose of the house, would be the people that would say, no, hold on a minute, let's revisit everything before come to production. And I think that through this talk, I'll try to touch on two different angles. First, how we internally innovate security, but most importantly is how we can sit together with the development community so that we can deliver secure applications at the end of the day. So in Microsoft, we have what we call the digital hotspot for the Central and Eastern Europe region, and we try to measure and harness the outcomes of the digital transformation. Some of them, I think we've been witnessing for the last 5 or 6 years. And I think one element is apparent that the more digitally advanced a country is, the more greener they are, the more competitive they are, the better is their performance in terms of economic aspect, and of course, the more innovative this country is. And OK, perhaps this rich picture doesn't tell a lot, but if we see the scale between digital competitiveness and innovation and performance, we can see that we follow in somehow a linear scale. So we have the impression that Western Europe, for example, leads the pack, and I think that's apparent out of that. And we can see that Central and Eastern Europe is mostly lagging behind. So we are in the bandwagon, but I think that we're starting to see the benefits of digital transformation. And why I'm mentioning this? I'm mentioning this because security is a fundamental piece of digital transformation. Recent surveys from the European Union showed, for example, that we expect for the next 3 years the single digital market, or the EU data economy, reaching out to about $1 trillion, or whatever the number in euro is. We also expect that out of this digital transformation journey, approximately 5.7 million new jobs, and when we say new jobs, it's going to be a blend of skills. We're not going to have more engineers or more devs or more security people. We're going to have a new blend of skills out of the existing ones. But all of these, of course, come at a cost, right? The same survey published by the European Union showed that in year 2020, the cost of cybercrime exceeded 5.5 trillion, surpassing Japan's GDP. So cybercrime is the third largest economy on the planet, after US and China. And that was back in 2020. The interesting angle on this is that the cost of cybercrime has doubled during the previous 5 years. So bear with me, perhaps in 2016, we're going to see cybercrime surpassing also the United States. And on the other hand, we see that apart from digital transformation, cybersecurity is becoming a top priority for board conversations, meaning that 1 out of 5 CEOs say that security is at the heart of their digital transformation journey, is at the heart of every innovation story they like to deliver to their enterprise. OK, I'm a security person. I have to also give some perspective. Last October, the month that passed, was the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So we preach cybersecurity. We made people aware. and we start to share some interesting facts. So the European Agency of Cybersecurity, ENISA, which sits right in the northern suburbs of Athens, published a survey that highlights two things, at least in my perspective. One is that the number of serious attacks has doubled. And since I have read also the previous year report, it has also doubled from the year back. And second is that the impact of geopolitics also affects cybersecurity. And as a Microsoft person, I'm witnessing also the Ukraine story, where we learned about the upcoming invasion of Ukraine about a year ago, where we see elevated cybersecurity activity from Russia to Ukraine. Second thing is that 1 out of 8 European businesses have become victims of cyber attacks, and almost 2 out of 5 European citizens, internet citizens, have witnessed some sort of phishing or farming or whatever. And I think that we receive, each one of us, at least a couple of emails on a single day. SMBs are also targeted. And of course, as we say in Microsoft in our digital defense report, is that there is no perimeter any longer, perhaps not even Santa Claus. There is no perimeter, definitely. And we see that attackers are not breaking in. They're logging in, meaning that since we don't have a perimeter, we don't see attackers, let's say, trying to breach through our firewalls. No, it's simply getting my passwords, getting my credentials, becoming me, and then taking access to my data. And I had a lot of discussions with, for example, CISOs of banks saying, Dimitri, at some point of time, we need to talk about encryption in Azure. That's a great point. But what's the point if I can take your identity and I can become you, and I can get access to your data, right? So we've seen a shift in identity, and this is important, I think, for the rest of the conversation. Okay, the world is changing rapidly, and I think that the perception we should use for the remaining, let's say, 25 minutes, is that if we think that business technology security is part of the new market we are facing. So on one hand, we have the market that we are addressing. We're producing new products, new services, we innovate, but we also have the bad guys. And that's a good picture to keep for the remaining of the conversation. So in the first topic that I said that I'm trying to address is that security shifts to continuous improvement. Okay, that perhaps might seem like a wisdom thing. So what we're trying to do is, fundamentally in security, we try to keep the bad guys out and leave the good guys in. But I think that we're witnessing times where we try now to innovate with our assets, so we have no time, to sit and relax and pause and take security, as we did in the previous years. Now we need to, integrate every security function across the development lifecycle. And we've created a number of initiatives. How many of you are aware of the term zero trust? Great, that's good. Zero trust, right? Strong, trust nobody. That's it. Leave everything outside. Okay, it seems blunt, but I think that this might be the reality that we're trying to face. And consider this in a CI/CD environment, right? Where you need to verify any interaction, across your pipeline about, their identity and their access management. Second is, and I think this is where it comes together, security, development, and operations. We did great in the DevOps in the previous years, right? It was great seeing development and operations people creating together, so we added security on top. And third, of course, continue to improve and innovate on the security operations. Take that with the amplification of cloud, and let's see where we stand today in terms of security. Things that are pretty much known to everyone, but in Linux there is an interesting command. It's /pwd. So when you type in Linux /pwd, it gets you to your existing, let's say, folder where you exactly are. And by the way, this comes from a Microsoft guy. So it's important to understand how we've changed the way that we innovate, how we've changed in the last years the way that we build applications. So today, and I think most of you have witnessed, let's say, the same pressure, bring the product up. we need, I don't know, this service in X weeks. Why in the past, I think that we have these long cycles with, test, dev, make a penetration test, bring it back, debug it, publish it, pray, get it back, add a new feature. From monolithic apps to microservices and containers, as I try to say, container of today is the VM of yesterday at a massive scale. We go serverless, we go big data, and most importantly, I think that we're creating service-focused teams, not feature-focused teams. And I leave everything on the bottom of the slide, the choice of whether this be IaaS or on-prem or PaaS, that's irrelevant. I think that today any developer simply chooses the tools they feel most familiar with and try to innovate and bring the result. So regardless of where a workload may be residing, it's a matter of choice or personal choice at the end of the day. So lesson number one, I think, or at least I believe this is for the development community, is product innovation means reach the customer quickly and be available. So availability is within the notion of security, at least for the development world. And in other words, mean that if something breaks, fix it while we're working. That's a good one. It's like trying to switch the engine while the plane is on the air. And I deliberately chose the plane because planes have been one of the most, resilient systems that we ever, created as people. You can you can land a plane remotely, for example, right? But you can never switch the engine or change the engine while the plane is running. Second is that developers have become important for the enterprise. From one hand, there is a scarcity of resources. And I also heard at least 5 times today that every company is looking for skilled developers or any developer at all, right? And second is that developers are really in the heart of a company's innovation. It is the difference between the present and the future, right? Software security paradox, speed and control, innovation and security. That's a pretty interesting, if I may say, equilibrium, to use a Latin word, which means fragile, balance. So any aspect in terms of speed or in terms of control that we stretch, the whole system starts to behave a little bit different. So what is DevOps? Thousands of, terms on the internet, on Wikipedia or whatever. I consider DevOps as an interesting breed of people that usually didn't go well or didn't go even along together. Developers in one hand, operations people at the other hand. Operations people have really no incentive to change anything that is literally working. Tell me that it's the same story for a developer, right? Absolutely not. So it used to be an experiment, and I'll share a personal story in a while. But the point is, bring these people together so that we can have continuous delivery. So anything that a developer asks, make sure that from operations perspective, it is there, and even before the developer asks. Agile vs DevOps, an obvious difference. Agile is, to the external world, and DevOps is mostly how teams are working internally. So Agile started as a function to address the complex customer requirements. And when we talk this internally, we see DevOps trying to, bridge the gap between developers and IT ops. There's no security yet. Bear with me. Culture change. I think this is the most, profound example of how innovation has changed in terms of development, security, and operations. Is that from a monolithic or from a waterfall model where we had, the program managers and the developers and tests, and that was it? We tried to move, and we reinvented the terms, being engineers or site reliability engineers. Again, availability is the only security aspect as of yet. And I think that we're somehow we're getting there, or we are there. So we have feature teams, we have different teams and different skill sets trying to fix one particular feature. And if I try to visualize this, instead of horizontal, teams taking care of the data layer, of the AP layer, of the user interface, now we're seeing everything is going vertical, so that we can have one feature across every layer. DevOps capabilities and practices, that's a Microsoft slide, and I'm going to stick and focus mostly on the continuous security aspect. I take that everything else, I take everything else for granted. So when we say continuous security or application security in Microsoft and not only, we're touching a number of elements and a number of areas. First and foremost, the security architecture. What is the blueprint of our application? What is the blueprint of our infrastructure? What is the blueprint of our data layers? And I guess all of us are, having most updated network diagrams and application diagrams. I can see people smiling. That's good. Second is about identity and access management. So who is having access to my resources and data at any given point of time? Application and data security, identity on steroids, if I may say. The security of the infrastructure per se, regardless if we're talking on-prem, multi-cloud, serverless, or whatever. Operate in a secure fashion, and of course add this governance, risk and compliance, laws, GDPR, and all that stuff, all these interesting guys, and take a mix so that we can take it back to the development people. So some basic principles from the Azure world is, and I think that's some principles that, if we start thinking and implementing this, I think that we're going to accelerate, let's say, the blending of those three different teams. Apply policies and controls proactively. Okay, that's an interesting one. In order to apply controls proactively, it means do a risk assessment on your to-be application, but also do a risk assessment on your as-is application. Automation, I think, is key. And if we harness the automation options that we have in the cloud world, I think that we can be better, much better in this one. Security checks into your CI/CD pipelines, and we'll come to that in a couple of slides. And of course, strengthen, let's say, your security posture, meaning continuously improve your security stance. From development to production, I'm just putting it here. Some terminology that perhaps it's good for the development world to try and understand. So what a threat modeling is. And sometimes, if we ask a developer to do a threat modeling, it's like, asking an auditor to check his books, right? So this is an area where we can improve as different, let's say, disciplines. Pre-commit hooks, secure coding standards. Okay, that's, how to say, a lot to digest. Static and dynamic code analysis. And I know how many of you are having this principle already in, performing static and dynamic code analysis. Because I'm mentioning this because we've seen, for example, assessment and penetration tests throughout, let's say, the development lifecycle. And before getting there, I'll share now a personal story. The first engagement I have with DevOps was 4 years ago in one of the largest utilities companies in the Middle East. So I'm appointed to this mission and say, Dimitri, we need you to see the security and to check the security, and you're going to speak with the head of DevOps. 4 years ago, DevOps, not really there, about a couple of years before the pandemic. So I enter the facility, in a highly secure facility, with checks and fingerprint recognition and whatever. Say, Dimitri, coffee, yes, and the network diagram, please. Yes, we're bringing the network diagram. And the application diagram, please. Yes, of course, it's coming. Okay. Perhaps I was expecting too much. So we sit in a large control room with this, 75-inch screens, and it pops up. And there's at the center of the infrastructure is a laptop, right? connected to anything you may imagine, from a database to industrial control system to the internet to the gambling sites of the world and everything. And of course, the head of DevOps was actually the super user, was the owner of the infrastructure and the owner of the development teams. That was my first encounter with DevOps. So I think that we developed a lot since then. Have we? Not sure. But in any case, securing the developer is actually an ask from the security people to the developers. Asked to be secured, asked to be protected. And there are a number of reasons for making this. So we're trying to differentiate between what we call enterprise security. The vast majority of users are following one profile in the principles of zero trust. High impact users and developers are following a different profile. Of course, the IT people that are usually, the gods, the super roots of the world, are having some different security profiles. And all of them are propagating, through the device, through the account, through the intermediary, through the interface. And we're trying to make, different security profiles. Securing the developer has been traditionally one of the, most challenging tasks that we as security people are trying to solve, right? It's not very easy to go to, a bank's digital factory and say, we're going to put you some limits. And you need to be creative and innovative within a certain boundary of controls. Understand the threats. Define security requirements. This is, I think, an excellent area to start working more intentionally together. Define some security requirements and say, for example, that, all right, I'm launching a retail application, and I want to, serve like 50,000 users a day. And we're having a Black Friday where we expect, times 4. So sitting together and defining some security requirements, I think it's a great first step. Second is the application diagram, and I'm referring, to this interesting diagram that I've witnessed before. But most importantly is sit and discuss and identify the threats so that we can have the controls that, protect against those particular threats and don't overdo or don't, underestimate things. Secure your code. I know I'm asking a lot now. Hard-coded secrets in your code. Resonates with someone? Year 2022, and still we're witnessing hard-coded secrets in the code. And take a step back and remember that what we said, hackers do not break in, they log in. So by giving in plain sight hard-coded secrets, it's like giving, the keys of the kingdom right away. Prevent new vulnerabilities from being introduced. I think that we have the tools now. We have the GitHub Advanced Security. We have the GitHub code repositories. We have CodeQL. And we have a number of open source tools where we can use on our benefit and understand that we have vulnerabilities in our code, remediate them, and move on. And also there is a whole community out there hosted in GitHub, but not only, where there are a number of CodeQL queries that other organizations have taken into account and worked that we can use also on our benefit. Secure your dependencies. It's one of the hottest and most heated conversations, if I may say, when I come to discuss application security with developers. And I know that is tough. We usually carry on, a number of code that we use, and we carry our dependencies, but with them, we're carrying all the vulnerabilities and all the errors because we take for granted that our dependencies are reliable and work. And since because we haven't challenged our dependencies back then, we consider them trusted. Respond faster to, by new vulnerabilities. There is a Dependabot. I don't know if you guys are aware of Dependabot. It can really, help towards patching and responding to new vulnerabilities. And coming then to workflow, a whole new world there for having the repos and everything. So I think that now we have the capabilities, at least in the cloud-native world, to automate things. We have Azure policies, we have this infra as code or policy as code. So we can say that this is, for example, the security blueprint of our Docker, of our Kubernetes clusters, of our firewalls, or whatever. So any time that we generate or a new Docker is born, it follows some policies. And it is only done through a particular, let's say, checked and secure Azure policy. Scan on containers, common vulnerabilities in Docker images. Again, it's a dependency thing. We're depending on Dockers. And usually, Dockers are created in a non-secure fashion. And of course, with secrets, we have the Azure Key Vault, which is, how to say, a repository of, having the secrets there and check, according to the principles of zero trust, whether a secret is requested from an application and whether this request is legit. And finally, a bit before the end, let's use the cloud-native controls. And I'm mentioning this slide because currently we have the capability, not only as Microsoft, but we as a community have the capability to secure workloads regardless of where these workloads are. They can be on-prem. For example, we can secure on-prem workloads with Azure services. That's an interesting one. Or we can secure AWS workloads through Azure. So instead of saying, in order to secure you, Mr. Customer or Mr. Developer, we need to have your workloads in my cloud, we don't care. Have it wherever you like. Use the tools that you feel confident with. We have the capability now to add security at any given workload. In other words, we can have pervasive security, and security will follow, let's say, the workload across its life cycle and across its journey. Summing up, security, development, and operations. I like to put it that way. One may say DevSecOps or OpSecDev or whatever the case might be. I think that both breeds are through a major culture change, both security people and the DevOps people. Create Agile security is like similar Create Agile programs. It's funny for a security guy, believe me, it's not funny perhaps today, but it's funny for a security guy saying, don't overdo with your policies. Even a simple security baseline will do. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to, let's say, to put any security control there. Start with a baseline and then try to gradually expand, let's say, to larger security requirements. And finally, leverage cloud-native controls. They are there, they are available, and they can serve your workloads regardless of the location. And with that, a very big thank you.
Dimitris, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I guess we have some time for Q&A. Well, I guess since I have the opportunity, I can start with the first one, like Adonis did in the previous sessions. So the question goes like this. In the real world, dealing with security requires supervision of all the service layers, the OS level, the database, the application, and integration of the DevOps team, the security team, and the IT operations team. So what do you think is the best practice in the coordination of these three units in an enterprise environment?
All right, that's a good one, because I think we haven't reached a consensus there, right? So we see, for example, the role of the CISO. CISO stands for Chief Information Security Officer, getting more and more elevated.
To the C-level, right? To
the C-level or to the board of directors. And I'm not sure that the rest of the functions are down to the ground. So we're covering the board. I'm not sure we're covering the keyboard. However, there are principles, and there are some parts also that Microsoft has published as best practices. Okay, that's something that says having reps, security reps, in business functions or development functions that have a dotted line to the CISO and the IT operations, at least for today, looks like the most logical norm. But again, we haven't reached, like say, a silver bullet here. That's a great question.
Okay, thank you. So do we have any more questions?
Yes, we have one. From the
Oh,
audience.
okay.
So, it's a great talk, so yes, indeed. Do you have an education plan or process in order to train developers and make them security aware? And can you give us some tips? Do you follow some sort of manifest?
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think that, Microsoft over the last few years have created three major, let me call them education pillars, but I think that through the course of the discussion we'll find out. First of all is the cloud adoption framework that is over there. It's public. And most importantly is the cloud adoption framework secure. So what this framework does, it literally dilutes all the information and all the experience that we have from all over the world and has best practices and principles on a high level for developers. The second pillar that let's say we have is the skilling initiative. And as part of the Microsoft investments in the country, we have committed ourselves to secure 100,000 IT professionals. So all the documentation about training is free, is public, is out there. Not even a login is required. So you may step in and see how it goes. And third is that we encourage, let's say, the Microsoft people to blend the communities. I'm a perfect example of this, but anyway, please be aware of, a number of communities that are supported by Microsoft, SQL schools, Azure heads, and a few other, where, these are events that we have open for the public, and we can, let's say, sit together and do that.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
For your time here. This is a gift for you.
Okay. Thank you again.
Great. Thank you so much.